Hi, it's really nice to meet you. I am Pastor Brenda. I am pastor of this Larger Story Church. And before we get started, how is your soul? Are you coming to watch this with an exhausted soul? One that I'm going to say some things and you're probably going to feel even more exhausted. I'm just going to warn you, but I think it's things that you know, but you don't know. So putting words to this is going to help bring awareness to it. And then I promise you, we're going to get to some soul healing, because that's what this is about tonight. Because we've all just come through a historic time. We have lived through a pandemic. We are living through a pandemic. Is this really ever going to end? I mean, maybe we're always going to be living in a pandemic from now on. I know when I hear any new CDC recommendations, my soul just clenches. Like, I don't want any more guesses. I don't want any more recommendations. I don't want a time when the CDC needs to tell me a suggestion for what I need to live my life in every day. I'm just so tired. My soul is so tired. Because let's just name it. We have just lived through 2 years of global trauma together. But it was global and it was trauma. We were put into a high stress situation with no finish line in sight. That does something to your soul. We're asked to take away our normal, take away the things that we enjoy. And that, all for the greater good, right? But that does something for our soul. And now that we're kind of, we're ending this pandemic and moving into a post-pandemic, I don't know what this is. We find ourselves rallying to get back to normal. But the problem with rallying is that means we are living on our reserves. We are digging into our reserves to rally through, to find our new normal, to find out what life is like now. And we were never meant to live on our reserves. The reserves are what's supposed to be stored away for short-term situations, right? And yet we're living on our reserves day in and day out. So these are some of the symptoms, and these are scientists are talking about this. Some of the real symptoms of what we are having to live with now in this post-pandemic space. We are experiencing short-term memory loss. I mean, do you find yourself forgetting the silliest things all the time? We are sleepier. We are just overall, we're so tired, and that really it pours out into being sleepier, physically exhausted. We have lost track of our age. I know this is especially true for teens and 20-somethings, that when didn't have birthdays to celebrate these age markers, you just think they're 2 years younger. It's just, if for some, we've lost track of our days. We don't know what a Tuesday or a Wednesday is. They all feel the same right now, right? We've lost a sense of creativity. It's just, creatives are suffering from this soul exhaustion. Work-life balance is a blur, and for sometimes it's becoming an obsolete. When you're working from home, what is a work-life balance, right? When you understand, it's just such a blur right now. We have COVID weight to work off. But this COVID weight is different than when we put on other extra weight, because we feel a little bit victimized. We didn't ask to go on quarantine. We didn't ask to be shut into our houses. We didn't ask to put this weight on. So we have this COVID weight, and we know we need to take it off, but we're also angry that we actually had this opportunity to put it on. So it's just a different way to be angry at our bodies. We're experiencing huge losses of trust, because think about this, and this is soul hurt. During the pandemic, everyone had the possibility to kill us. I don't know if you were going to carry the virus and be the one that was going to kill me or kill a loved one in my family. So all of a sudden, everyone became the enemy. And that, after such an extended part of time, really has done some soul damage to us. Let me just give you 2 true life stories from my life. I, during the pandemic, spent a lot of time outside. I would walk, I have a park just across the river from where I live, and I did lots and lots of miles. I had the time, I needed to be out of the house. Being outdoors was safe during the pandemic, right? And I would just do miles and miles. And I found out we have a whole tree series on the YouTube channel about the wonder of trees. I didn't even know this yet, but how healing it is to be under trees. And I think that was part of it too. So I spent just miles and miles. But I'm walking my very wide path in this large enough park with not many people in it. And I'm 5 feet, I'm not wearing a mask. I'm walking, I am exercising. And I see people coming up on the path ahead of me, like 10, 15 feet. And they see me and they start grabbing and put their mask on. Like I am going to endanger them. Like I am going to hurt them. And when we're outside, I'm nowhere near 5 feet from them. When we would cross in the path, both of us would get off the path, so we were still kept that 5 feet distance. But I saw them put their mask on. And that just does ping, 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 just does some damage to your soul when the other is a stranger and thinks you're going to hurt them. This is just causing some soul damage. My second story is just even sadder. I was meeting with a grown teen last week, and she lost her father to COVID. She got COVID, and then her father got COVID, and he was a widower living by himself. And she wanted to go and take care of him because he was quite sick. She was quite sick too, but she wanted to go take care of him. And the nurse said, you can't go see him because your strain of COVID may affect his strain of COVID and make him even sicker. The nurse said, you could actually cause harm to your father by visiting him who was living alone, who was quite sick. And then he died. She was told by a nurse that she could actually kill somebody that she loved, who died. Now, we don't know. We talked about this. If she had gone, if anything would have changed differently, if he was going to die anyway. But do you see what this message, we did this for the greater good for humanity during a pandemic. But do you see and do you feel the damage this does to our souls? Part of this also is because we were at home or we were bubbling with certain people, we've lost a lot of relationships too. We just haven't reconnected. It's just too exhausting to reconnect for one. Or maybe you saw something on Facebook or Instagram and you're like, oh, I didn't know they felt that way about masking or about the government or whatever. And all of a sudden you're like, maybe I just won't reconnect with them. Maybe, whatever. And we're letting these relationships go instead of taking the effort to reconnect. But of course it takes effort, and we're already living on your reserves. You don't have the effort to do that, do you? We've lost trust in institutions, particularly the government. Now, and this is trickling down into the church too, where we just don't trust institutions. Now, I want to say something very, very, very clear here. There's no blame in the government in this. There's no othering of the government or anybody. There's no othering in this statement. Because really, how did they know how to lead through this? How would anybody know how to lead through this? I give them grace. But I also realize there's just a loss of trust in institutions, and that does affect our souls. We are seeking isolation more as humans. Now that, we can move about more, we really are kind of drawn to the isolation. Have you ever been invited to a party and then it was canceled and you felt relief? Or maybe you weren't invited to the party and you're like, yes, I wasn't invited to that party. That relief is because our souls are so tired and we just don't have it in us to do a social function. What about the soul damage done due to the increased use of social media? I mean, we know during the pandemic, we were on our phones so much. This was our news information. This is a way to connect with other people. We're on their phones so much more than we were before. And we know the science of it. We hear this enough to know that social media is damaging, smartphone use is damaging to our souls. But yet, during the pandemic, we're on it even more. There's something broken in that. We used to have the assumption we could go to the grocery store and get all of our groceries. But now we find empty shelves. We find, got to go to 2 stores to finish our list, or we had to wait. Right? Just this assumption. We can't assume anything. We used to be able to fly without any problem. We go to A to B, get our flight, be no drama at all. And now we can't have that assumption. Flying is tumultuous right now. The chance of being canceled is so real. So we're living our life on this edge, like even the basic assumptions we had about life, now, 2 years later, don't make any sense. Lastly, we have nothing left to give to the idiots in the world. We used to maybe had more grace, more patience with people, but lately, we don't. I actually just heard this stat, and I wish I could remember the source, so I don't have it, but it's a good one. In 2019, there was on flights, there was a total of 15 flights that were grounded because somebody on the flight was unruly. Where the type of flight where they stop it midway, land it, arrest the person, take him off or her off the airplane. It happened 15 times in 2019. In 2021, statistically, 500 cases. We just don't have the patience anymore for the idiots because we are living on our reserves and we're not meant to live on our reserves. So here's your first conversation question for the night. I hope you gathered with your family or with your roommates or your small group, but I just gave you a lot. I want you guys just to pause, talk about what your soul is saying to you about what I just said. All these things that you kind of knew in your soul, but now that you have words for it and you see it, have a conversation about how your souls are feeling. I'll be right here. Okay, I've got some more. Are your souls ready for this? We need to replenish these reserves. We need to take care of our souls so that there's more healing coming in than there is going out. This is part of our healing. And our souls are designed and created to have connection to God. Our souls are actually healed when we are in union with God. And this is different from having a faith. This is different from following a creed. It is when we find those union moments with God, when heaven and earth come together, whenever our soul can cultivate quiet, we can find God. This is also true about the pandemic. And this is a bit prophetic, and this is actually a little bit hopeful here. The pandemic gave us all a reset because our life before the pandemic was unsustainable. If you can remember, once we got this technology and the smartphones, this was all supposed to make our lives easier, more manageable, more in control. But what was happening over the years was life was getting faster and faster and faster. We were scheduling more and trying to handle more and do more in our life, and multitasking became something that was bragged about, and technology was supposed to help us multitask better, and all the books and all the podcasts were about how to manage your life, and we were just on this ever increasing schedule that was unsustainable. We were this proverbial frog in a kettle where the water is boiling around us, but because we're the frog, we didn't know it was heating up, and we never jumped out of the kettle. We just kept adjusting our lives to this unreasonable demand of a schedule. And then boom, one day in March 2020, our schedules all got a reset. We had to stop. And you found joy in that, because when you got to cancel all those things on your schedule, you felt joy. When you got to just stay home and finally binge watch that TV show, or spend time with your family, or do that craft you've been putting off, you felt joy because you were able to stop that pace that you were on. This pandemic gave us a chance to stop what was unsustainable, to get this reset and start our lives again. This was a gift. This gift has a cost with it, but this was a gift. And you hear what I'm saying here? Is your soul hearing what I'm saying here? So as we are finding ourselves going back to normal, whatever that looks like, we have a chance to now reschedule our lives in a much more sustainable way. How are you doing with that? Are you finding yourself quick to get overscheduled again? Or are you finding yourself hesitant to schedule yourself? Take the reset, because our culture needed it. It was a prophetic moment here. So, second question I want to ask you. How are you doing with that reset? How is your scheduling? How are you able to balance the demands of your life better after this 2-year pandemic period? Have that conversation. So, how is your soul feeling? John Eldredge gave me some stuff. He's an author. This book, Resilient, awesome. Inspired a lot of his thoughts here. He has a name for what we're feeling right now. It's called lethargy creep. It is like we're living on our reserves. We don't have the capacity to handle as much in our lives, so we are just finding ourselves becoming lethargic. Like maybe this instance, like we're going to go out to dinner tonight, family dinner, we're going to go out. And it comes down to actually leaving the house. We're like, I don't know if I can do it. Let's just order in instead. And you can think about this, so many situations in your life. And it's coming down all the way where it even affects our faith life. Like we should be doing that daily, maybe a half-hour time with God every day. And we come right down to it. You're like, I don't even have it in me to open the Bible. I don't even have it in me to even clear my head to have thoughts of prayer, because my head is so cloudy right now. Lethargy creep is coming in. So this is the beginning of a new series that we're doing. It's actually going to be a 15-week series, because our souls need healing. This is something that should be part of our normal growth life, but even more so now as we are in this healing process. This is something our exhausted souls need more than we even realize. And really, when we're going to look at this stuff every week, these are all just doable faith tweaks. to help you grow and heal. There's a verse we're going to look at every week for this series. It's Matthew 11:28 through 30. And then Jesus said, this is the verse. Then Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light." There's so much to this verse. But I think right now, what I want to say to our exhausted souls, we would think in these moments, we would like Jesus to give us a mattress or a vacation. Something like that, right? But what Jesus gives us is a new way to carry life. He doesn't offer us an escape. He offers us a piece of equipment that is going to help us carry through. I think I would prefer the vacation, but this yoke that he's going to carry with me through everything sounds like he's very close to me and very much intends to spend every bit of this with me. That's just the beginning of what we're going to learn out of this. I have one book recommendation for you to read for this entire series. We're going to be ending at Christmas time. This is a book called Gentle and Lowly by Dane Ortlund. It's all about this verses we just read. When I read this, my soul breathed. So many Christian books are great, but there's always like, go do this and be inspired and do this, and here's your how-to list, and this is my story, and you can be inspired, and it's just, and this one, I just breathe. So get this book, give yourself 15 weeks to read it. Use this as a slow growth practice. Read just a section here and there. It's full of puritanical thoughts and authors. So you got wisdom in here from 200 and 300 years ago, which is just nice to get a long view perspective, a larger story perspective on what's on this verse and who Jesus is. It was, like I said, this is one of our goals for this. More about this series is I'm going to just provide you resource after resource after resource on how to heal our souls that are living on reserve. So for 15 weeks, we're going to talk about finding space for holy in our ordinary lives, in our disappointment with God, in how we need each other, in our sleep. We're going to talk about sleep for one whole night, in the life being crazy busy, in rest, in technology. Oh, there's going to be a guest speaker that night, not a YouTube channel for that one, so maybe you want to check that one out in person. Lots of really, really hopeful resources there. Boundary decisions, working from our worth, stamina, waiting on God stuff. How can we find space and holy? We have to wait on God. In the brave decisions we need to make every day, talk about that. In food and celebration. We're going to end up at Christmas time talking about food and celebration. So for this series, you also have homework. In the comments here, I'm going to leave you a link. This is a Google form. It's an assessment, and you have to print it. You can't do it online. You have to print it, score yourself. I don't care what your answers are, but it's just going to reveal to you the 3 areas that you're weakest in when it comes to your spiritual formation. And so it's just for you to have. It's just a really good, like, oh, okay, this kind of stuff. Then we're going to retake this again in December and see how your life has changed over the last couple of months here. So you can take that assessment. That's your homework. We're going to talk a lot about, in this series, Celestian spirituality. Now this is a Catholic practice, But again, we're part of the large story that's over 2,000 years old, and part of these practices are we walk in them because they're all part of our story. And this was a practice written up by Saint Francis de Sales, hence Salesian spirituality, and he wrote this book in 1609. Yeah, it's part of our larger story. And what he put together, we're going to talk about this week after week, but is this, it's such common sense, it's such brilliance, yet, of course, we forget. The Salesian tradition values doing the little things in the midst of ordinary and busy lives. In a very real sense, the person lives Jesus by doing all ordinary things in an extraordinary way. The scriptural base for this whole value is, "Come to me, all who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble of heart." Our very verse is the core of this spirituality practice. So the practice is these little virtues, and he named these virtues as kindness, gentleness, thoughtful concern for others, humility, simplicity, hospitality, gratitude, patience, generosity, and honesty. That when we practice these, and these are those small deliberate tweaks we put into practice to lead our brains, when we practice these, then we are ready to practice those big virtues like boldness and bravery. And these are those moments that people's testimonies are made of, when there's something really big happen, but you've got to practice daily all these little virtues to get you ready for those few moments in your life when those big moments happen. Finding space for holy, I think part of this practice is recognizing those moments when you have practiced the little virtues. I think we've gotten out of practice about kindness and gentleness and thoughtful concern for others, or we're just too tired. This lethargy creep is in. But we're going to be recognizing these little virtues to see if we can be ready for something that God is going to do in our lives. Every week, I'm going to have an app for you. This will be left in the comments. I'm going to talk about it, this is ironic because technology tends to creep into our spacious places, right? It seems to take away our holy, right? Yet, really, technology can be used for good, and I'm going to give you an app every week to help you find a way to practice quiet, to practice space for holy. Also in the comments, you're going to find a PDF link for a liturgical written prayer that we are praying together as a church every Friday night together. Please join us on Friday nights. Have these conversations with us live. It's fascinating. It's insightful. It is gold in those conversations. And we're going to be reading this prayer together. Now, liturgical prayer is really just written words that we just use as another way to pray. It's a focused prayer. It gives us words for when our minds wander. And the beauty of this, we're going to do this one for 15 weeks, is we're going to see how our souls change by just praying these words together. So you have this link. It's a PDF. Print it, put it with your devotions, and just pray it at least once a week with us, please. It comes from a book. I did not write this prayer. It comes from this book, Love Yourself, by Jerry and Denise Basil. It's their words. I've just tweaked it a little bit to make it into a prayer for us to read. Also, we are going to be doing reading plans together through the YouVersion app. Something new as of August 2022 with YouVersion is you can sign up to be a part of a church. So if you go to YouVersion and you can find Larger Story Church and name it as your church, you go to our church page and there'll be a reading plan there that's going to correlate with what we have just talked about. There's a reading plan there for you right now. I'm also going to be talking about a growing slow habit. This is just a one sentence, common sense way to slow your life down. These have been crowdsourced from the people in our church. They've all contributed. I'm making this list. I'm going to give you one a week. At the end of the series, we're going to have this wonderful list of 15 practical ways to slow your life down. And then we're going to also be reading every week, and you're going to have this also in the comments, a breath prayer. These are written by a beautiful author named Cole Arthur Riley. She goes by the name the Black Liturgist, and she has put these breath prayers together. She's somebody great to follow. The links to follow her will be also in the comments. And we're going to I'm going to take one of these every week, it's in our church email, on the church Facebook page, and we'll leave it here in the comments, where you could just take this and breathe this breath prayer. So we're going to have this benediction with this breath prayer for the week. But first, I want to give you something really great to understand as we go forward with this. We're mentioned so often, and you feel it right now, this soul exhaustion. I mean, we've all suffered more than I think we realize through this pandemic. As much joy as we've had to find some normality again, and be with people again, and have parties and stuff like that, we're still not right. There's something still heavy in our souls, and I just named a lot of reasons why, and this needs healing. But I want you to realize that you here are beginning ahead of everyone else, because you know the answer is Jesus. You know about this way of Jesus, and you know that your identity is in Jesus. Just this simple truth is you being ahead of everybody else in this healing process. Rejoice in that. And so here, our breath prayer for the week. We're going to breathe in. We're going to breathe out. I am done holding this breath. I deserve to exhale. I am done holding this breath. I deserve to exhale. I am done holding this breath. I deserve to exhale. I am done holding this breath. I deserve to exhale. How are you feeling? Take this breath prayer. Put it on a screensaver. Put it on your phone. Hang it in your bathroom window. Write it on a sticky note. Pray this day in and day out. And see if you can find some healing so we can stop living in our reserves. May you have a big week. May you see your exhaustion and this lethargy creep and decide to try a little virtue anyway. May you find some moments where you can breathe and pray and find God in this quiet. And may your soul start healing. Amen.